What's the one piece of advice you'd give a new podcaster? I hear that question, or I see that question all the time, and today I'm going to give you my answer. What's happening, podcasters? This is 1000 Podcasters, and I'm Brian Ensminger. I want to see you be successful with your podcast. This particular episode is part of a series. I'm doing a 30-day challenge. It's the 30-day solo podcast challenge with David Hooper over at Big Podcast, and this is also part of National Podcast Post Month. You can find links to both of those in the episode notes. Starting a podcast is a little bit like driving somewhere that you've never been before. Even with a map and a great car, it's possible to get lost. And what's worse, many of us try to start our podcasts with an entire busload of backseat drivers all trying to tell us what to do. So listen to discover the one thing that I recommend time and time again for new podcasters when they want that one piece of advice that I'd give every starting podcaster. If you follow this, you'll be able to avoid those wrong turns, the potholes, and the speed bumps. So what's that one piece of advice? Well, I'm going to take you back to when I started my first show, the Engaging Missions Show. It was nearly 6 years ago now. And when I was getting started, I didn't really know what I didn't know. I had some background in music and audio production. I had some experience, but I'd never been a podcaster. And as I quickly discovered, there's a lot to learn. You have to pick the microphone. You have to pick a format. There's a lot of different things to be done, especially if you're wanting to build a show that's going to last a long time. Truth be told, you can start a show with a lot less than what I did, but I wanted to take that particular approach, but there are a lot of decisions to make. There was a lot of stuff to do. And one of the things I discovered very quickly is everybody had an opinion. I could search YouTube and find answers from a variety of people. I could go online to Facebook or some other places and look for answers. And nearly everybody had an answer or more than one answer. Some of the answers were useful. Some of them were kind of snarky. I mean, it just happens. But it started to get overwhelming. It started to get challenging. And what I didn't have was a framework for how to approach the whole thing. Even though there were a lot of different answers, a lot of probably really good answers, they didn't all agree. And there was no overarching framework available for me to follow until I found one. I was listening to a podcast, and I know I've shared this before. I was listening to Maron Barraquette's podcast. It's no longer in production, but one of the things that he offered was a free How to Get Your Podcast Started course. It was a video course. I don't remember the exact length of time, but it was scheduled to take course over a couple of weeks, a few weeks. I don't remember the exact amount of time. And every day there was an assignment. And we went through things like defining our ideal customer and designing the artwork and going to get the artwork, well, really going to get the artwork designed because I was not a designer and my designs were not great. So I went and had somebody do that design for me, choosing music, choosing the media hosting company, setting up a WordPress website, a lot of stuff that technically you don't have to do, but I kind of view as best practices, especially if you're wanting to establish some kind of brand online. But what I was able to do was go through his course. And even though it was a free course, I had some access to him. So if I had questions, I could ask questions and get some answers. I went through that, and I was able to get I was able to get my podcast launched and out there. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't as good as it is now, but it was out there, and it got me started. And then I was able to connect with and interview. Now I think I'm on episode 274 to be published very soon. So it's been going for a while, and I've been able to do that in part because of the investment that was made in me by this course. So what's the takeaway from this? The takeaway from my perspective is the one piece of advice I would give any new podcaster. Find one person you trust and listen to them and let them be your guide to get started. Somebody that you trust, somebody that's been there before, somebody who has a show similar to what you want to have. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. It doesn't have to be exactly the same market, but you want somebody who's done something like what you're wanting to do. So if you're wanting to start a narrative style podcast where you're going through and you're designing narration and you're building a storyline and you're piecing together different pieces from interviews, you may want to find somebody who's done that to help be your guide, because you're not just going to be setting up the technical aspects of the podcast. You're also going to have to talk about workflow and tools and things like that. And somebody who's been there and done that will be much more valuable to you to help you get started than somebody who hasn't. Now, I don't want to be discounting the many consultants out there who are able to be very helpful and provide the technical assistance and provide some guidance, but maybe don't have that particular experience. But if you can find that unicorn almost, that person who can be there and be your guide, find that person and listen to them. And don't go out and search the internet for other answers and try and find other ideas and ask questions in groups. Take the time to follow what they set out for you and follow it until you're able to do it well and you're starting to find your own answers and you're starting to work out your own examples and you're starting to become more comfortable with what you're doing. And then if you want to start asking additional people, go for it. But for that initial phase, avoid the overwhelm and the massive confusion that can happen when you start asking for answers from lots of people, because lots of people have answers, but if they're not familiar with exactly what you're trying to do, they can create confusion that the act of just listening to that one person will help you avoid. What about you? If you've been out for a while, if you've been around for a while, what's the one piece of advice you would give to a new podcaster? Leave a comment in the episode notes. You'll find those at toptieraudio.com/76 so that we can all check those out. I'd really love to read those. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at toptieraudio.com. That's where you'll find links so that you can subscribe to this show. You can find the YouTube channel where I do tutorial videos. You can connect with me personally by sending an email or finding social profiles. If you'd like to set up a consultation or talk to me about editing a show, all of that is at toptieraudio.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and make a great podcast.